How you doing today? It's Monday, and we're going to tie some flies, right? Is everybody going to tie with me today? This is a really difficult fly, so I hope you can make it through this one. It's going to be a tough one. As Bill Spicer says, get your notebooks out, kids. It's going to be a technical one. Anyway, we are going to tie. I'm not going to tell you what we're going to tie. I'm going to wait till more people come on, and then I'm going to tell you what we're going to tie. But I can tell you, hi, Roger. Roger's in. How you doing, Roger? How's Irma? And Larry. Hey, Larry. How you doing? And Mark. The regular crew is coming in here. And another Mark. And let me just tell you guys what we're gonna while we're waiting for more people to come in. Let me tell you what we're gonna tie for the next month or so. Next week we're gonna tie a classic thorax blueing olive, a size 18 dry fly. So it'll be a small one, it's the classic thorax tie with hackle, and we're gonna tie. I'm gonna tie it with turkey flats, which are sometimes tough to get, although they shouldn't be because they're everywhere. But it can be also tied with EP fiber or a piece of duck quill, actually, or goose quill. And then Monday, March 22nd, we're going to be tying a really cool crayfish pattern called the Come At Me Cray, which actually I'll show you one. I got one here. And this is a pattern. It's a lot more complicated pattern. This is a pattern by the great Tim Johnson. See if I can get it to focus. Come on, focus on that. Focus on that. Kind of too close, I guess. Anyway, what's cool about this crayfish pattern is it has a fur claw with a piece of foam on it, and when this thing rests on the bottom, the foam pulls up the claws and into that defensive position. So it's a fairly complex fly, but it's going to be really fun to tie. That's not what this isn't one of mine. This is one from stock, so I could see how they're tying it because I never tied this one before. But Tim Johnson will be joining us, and he'll be walking me through it. So Tim's always a lot of fun. So that should be great. Or that should be fun, anyways. I don't know if it'll be great. And then Monday, March 29th, we're tying Croston's Thread Quill Copper Bead. And that is a kind of a Euro nymph, quick sinking, fairly easy to tie nymph for early season nymphing. And then when Tim Flagler and I meet up on April 5th, we're going to be tying I forgot the name of it. It's an early. What is the name of that thing?
The Bugmeister. The Bugmeister.
The Bugmeister. Thank you, Julia. The Bugmeister, which is a big dry fly, big parachute dry fly. So anyway, that's what we're going to be tying. Today, we're tying a squirmy worm. And it's not a hard fly to tie, but there are a few tricks to make them look right. And it's a fly that you want to have a lot of because you're going to lose them and they're going to fall apart. This is not a super durable fly. You can catch maybe a half dozen fish on them before they start to fall apart. Maybe one if it's a big brown trout with teeth, but they're kind of fragile and they're kind of almost disposable. But the thing is, when they fall apart, you can save the hook and the bead and cut everything off, cut the thread off, and tie another one on there. So it's almost like real worm fishing because you have to tie on a new worm. So I know that a lot of people look down on the squirmy worm because, I don't know, because it looks like a worm, I guess. There's a lot of people that that look down on worm flies in general. Maybe because it's got this synthetic squirmy material that looks like a rubber worm. But artificial bass anglers have been using rubber worms for years, and they're not shy about it. And so we shouldn't be either. We're imitating both an aquatic worm. There are aquatic worms that look just like earthworms, the standard earthworms you find in your garden, and standard garden worms. When there's a rise of water, get washed into the stream. So we're matching the hatch. We're imitating what fish like to eat, and the fly does require some a little bit of skill, and they're fun. But you want to tie a lot of them, so you want to learn how to tie them efficiently, because you're going to lose them. The squirmy wormy isn't any good unless it's fish close to the bottom, so you're going to lose them. Or they're going to fall apart. So you just want to be able to crank them out. You don't want to go fishing without a dozen of these things if they're working. And they don't always work. They work best in high water. So spring's coming. We're going to have high water. We're going to have snow melt. They work really, really well. It's one of the best high water flies that I know of. Fish will gobble them up. And so we're going to be faced with high water, most of us. And there's going to be both aquatic worms that get washed in and terrestrial worms that get washed in. So it's going to be a good thing to fish. And it's probably just a lure, too. Maybe fish take it for a worm. Maybe they don't. Maybe just because it looks alive, they grab it because it looks like a hunk of food. And I personally get even dirtier with my squirmy worms because I put a fluorescent orange bead on it about the size of a trout egg. So not only am I maybe fishing a worm imitation, but I'm fishing an egg imitation at the same time. So this is really dirty, and I don't care, and you shouldn't care either. If you don't like the idea of tying squirmy worms, then don't use them. But don't give anybody else grief for fishing them, because it's truly a fly and they work. So I should stop apologizing for them. Somebody asked me, I saw about, is it legal everywhere? I think that it's, I don't know of any place where it's illegal. Mark just asked for a big stonefly. Flagler and I just tied a big stonefly last week. How big do you want them, Mark? we just tied a big stonefly. We did it for you because you suggested a stonefly. So we tied that stonefly last week. So probably won't tie another one for a while. Tadig, I'm not going to answer your question right now, and I don't know how to answer it, actually, about the smolt. I saw another question. Oh, they fall. Somebody asked about them falling apart in their fly box, and yeah, they fall apart in mine too. And I learned yesterday, actually, when I was on a tying session with Deegan Cherry for International Women's Day, which is today, but we were tying with her yesterday. She lives in Texas, and they don't use squirmy wormies because they fall apart in the heat. And I have noticed that my squirmies will generally fall apart by the end of the season, and I have to replace them all. And they just seem to kind of deteriorate. And so it may be heat. I'm not quite sure. One of the things that you want to be careful with are cements on this material. But what I did this morning was I took a couple pieces of squirmy material and I put a glob of standard head cement, water-based head cement, super glue, UV resin, and liquid fusion on them. And we're going to take a look at them today and see how they fared. And I don't see any of them falling apart yet, but I know that in the past I have put head cement by accident on squirmies and they've fallen apart immediately. So I'm not sure if they're using a new formula squirmy material these days, but we'll take a look and we'll pull on them and we'll see if they break later. I don't know if they're going to, but we'll check all those glues. I don't put any glue on my Squirmies. I double whip finish at the end just for security, but I don't put any glue on them, and a couple reasons. One is that I think the glue might deteriorate the stuff eventually. The other reason is that when the Squirmy falls apart and I still have a hook and a bead left, I can bring them home and easily cut the thread off and put a new piece of Squirmy material using the same hook and bead that I was using before. So let's see, what other questions do we have? Julia, what have I missed? What?
I haven't seen any that you've missed.
I don't see any haters here. I don't see any haters. The disintegration thing is a problem. I think it's legal to fish everywhere. I don't know anywhere. They're usually tied weighted, and as long as you can fish weighted flies, it should be okay. Tim says, just show the thing. All right. There.
Ben is asking. Oh wait, ooh.
That's an orange one. We're going to tie a red one, but that's an orange one. I was experimenting with some colors today.
Nice.
All right.
Like candy.
All right. I showed the thing.
Yeah. Ben's asking what's that cool shirt? I'm guessing that's the shirt you're wearing.
Oh, yeah. This is a new Pro Sun hoodie. It's relatively new, and there's some new colors this season. But it's a really lightweight SPF 50 fabric. It breathes really well. It's comfortable here in the house, and we can wear them I've worn them in the Bahamas in really hot weather, and I've worn them in hot Vermont summer weather. So it's the Pro Sun hoodie. It has a hood, so you don't have to wear a buff if you don't want to, because I hate buffs. So you can just do that. And if you have a beard, you don't have to worry too much. A little sunscreen on the cheeks and the nose, and you're good. So anyways, that's what I'm wearing, Will. Thank you, Will, for asking. I'm a fashion plate, I know. Tiger. Tiger.
Spencer's asking, can you talk about color variations to use in different water visibilities?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I tie all mine in kind of the bright red color, and then I tie some in tan. I've experimented with them, and I honestly haven't seen much difference in the different colors. But it's hardly scientific. It's tough to get a scientific or even a subjective difference. But I haven't noticed any color difference. I think it's just more fun to have a bunch of colors. But if one doesn't work, you might try another. But I haven't figured out any rules of thumb for what color Squirmy to fish and what color water. If the water's relatively clear, you might try a tan one with a copper. I tie my tan ones with a copper or brass bead, so it's not quite as bright as this big orange sucker here. So Tim likes hot pink best, says Veronica. Okay, well, who's going to argue with Tim Flagler?
Fred's asking if you can talk a little bit how you fish these with a hopper dropper or with a strike indicator.
You want to fish this dead drift. However you fish it. I usually, because they're heavy, I usually fish them with an indicator and not dry dropper, because I put a heavy bead on them, because there's no sense in fishing a worm in mid-water. They don't hatch. They do tumble a little bit, but there's really no sense. There's really no sense in fishing them, and you can't swing them. If you swing it, a fish might take it swinging, but they twist in the water when you swing them, and they don't have the kind of action that would really work swung. So it's just a dead drift fly. However you dead drift a fly, whether it's Euro nymphing, you can Euro nymph them, you can dry dropper them if you got a big enough dry fly, or you can fish them with an indicator. And what I usually do is put a smaller, a little mayfly or caddisfly nymph behind the squirmy, tied on or tied above the squirmy sometimes if I'm tying the dropper in line in the leader. But yeah, squirmy and something a little more subtle is a good combination. Oh, what else? I use dubbing with these so it protects the worm material. Oh, that's interesting, John. Makes it easy to tie in. Huh, that's interesting. I'll have to try that. I'll have to try that sometime. I've got a couple ways to keep it from rolling on the shank, which we'll show. All right, any other questions before I start? And by the way, if you started your angling life as a worm dunker, which I did when I was a kid, fish these just like a worm, except you got to set the hook quicker because fish will hold on to these a little bit longer than most flies, but they'll feel the bead and they'll spit it out pretty quickly. Okay. So anyway, let's start tying. Oops, wrong one. So here are the materials. I use a jig hook, but you don't have to. You can use any hook you want. And I tie all of mine in size 12. I don't think there's any reason for going with a smaller hook. If you use a smaller hook, the fish might swallow them easier. And I use this barbless jig hook just in case the fish do take them deep, because it is a worm and it is kind of soft, so they might take them deep. But use a barbless jig hook, or you could use the standard wide gape hook. But size 12 seems to be fine. I don't think you need to do any different than a size 12. So, the squirmy material looks like this. It's like a koosh ball material, but I think it's different. I think somebody mentioned that it's not as good quality and it doesn't hold up as well, the koosh ball material. That's where the idea originally came from. And I like to put a pretty big bead on. So this is a 5/32 slotted tungsten bead. And you're going to start this by taking your hook, whether it's a jig hook or not, and finding not the slotted hole, but the round hole in the bead. Roll it around in your fingers until you find it, and then you slip it on the hook shank and take it over to your vise. Okay, so first thing you want to do, and I'm going to tie my squirmy different. The one that Orvis sells and you see commercially just has the squirmy material coming out the back, and I like to have it 4 1/2 style. I like to have some squirmy coming out of the front and some squirmy coming out of the back, and it also makes it a little harder to tie, which makes it a little more challenging, and I think they look better that way. So you want to start your thread. I'm using orange 6/0 thread on this. You want to kind of either match the body material or the bead with your thread. But I'm going to start my thread just the same way you normally do. And you're going to leave that bead parked at the bend. Just stick it there out of the way. And then you're going to come up right to that point where that thing bends, that hook bends down, and then back off just a couple turns and park your thread right there. And now you're going to take a piece of squirmy material and cut a relatively short piece. And you're going to take that short piece, and it's probably a good idea to spin your bobbin counterclockwise. This will flatten the thread, which will make it a little easier to grab this, and also it will jump back into your fingers. Now, make these long when you tie them. You can always cut them back, but you can't to make them smaller, but you can't make them longer. So just make that first piece real. I'm going to make this first piece really long, and you've got your thread spun counterclockwise, so it's going to jump back a little bit. And just, some people use a pinch wrap. I like to just push my finger against the far side and come down on that piece of material, not too hard, just kind of moderate tension wraps, and about 4 times, like so. So hopefully this is, sticking out straight in front of the eye. Then you want to take the tag end of that squirmy material and pull it toward you, put a little bit of tension on it, and then wrap back over it as you're pulling on that. That'll keep that front piece from rolling over to the far side. And you're going to trim that little piece. Stretch it a little. You can stretch it a little bit here. You don't want to do a lot of stretching with this stuff. Okay. And then probably want to go back over that. Don't go all the way up to where you tied it in, but go back over it so that you can slip that bead over there. And then you're going to whip finish. Just a quick one, maybe 3 turns, because this is going to be all buried. And now you're going to slip that bead. Make sure that the slot is on top, and you're going to just slip that bead over that material, and it'll usually straighten this stuff out. The worm material might hang one side to the other, but that doesn't matter, because real worms squirm a lot in the water. That's why we call them squirmy wormies. And don't push too hard, because if you push too hard, you will push that worm material down over the eye, and you'll have trouble getting your tippet through there. Everybody with me so far? Now I'm going to reattach my thread. And wind back to the bead, and then push the bead forward a little bit and build up some thread behind that bead so that it stays in place. You want, again, double check and make sure that you got room in the eye, because if you put too much pressure and you push that bead too far forward, it's gonna the worm material is gonna fall down over the eye, and then it'll be tough to get your tippet in there. And then you want to go back to the bend, and to help secure this, I like to go around the bend, just barely around the bend, and then back up to where the bend straightens out. So I've got a little bit of thread, but just a little bit of thread beyond there. Any questions so far, Julia?
No, we don't have any questions. It's John Porter's 65th birthday today, so we are wishing him happy birthday.
Happy birthday,
regular
John.
Listener, or regular watcher.
Happy birthday, John.
Oh, Roger Bird's asking if that's a tungsten bead.
Yes, tungsten, Roger. Tungsten. Absolutely tungsten.
I think you already mentioned this, but they're asking about that, like how thick of a thread to use.
Oh, I'm using 6.0.
Okay.
I don't think it matters. I don't think it really matters what thread. People worry about cutting the material with the thread, but if you use moderate tension, I don't have any trouble cutting the Squirmy material with the thread. So I think you could use heavier. I probably wouldn't use lighter than 6.0 because a thinner thread might cut the material. You could probably get away with a 140 or even a 210 denier thread and flatten it. Yeah, you don't really need to worry about the thread here. I do like to match the color to the bead and the body material as best I can. All right. So now you're going to take your longer piece of Squirmy and you're going to tie it in the same way at the bend. Again, make it long and spin that thread counterclockwise so it jumps back a little bit and flattens. And then just come over gently over the top. Put your finger on the far side and cinch down on that. And then take another turn. And I'm not putting a ton of pressure on here. Take about, and it's a little tricky sometimes to get it in place.
Tom, this is an interesting question from JR. They asked, do you ever have problems with stretching the material leading to the material breaking down later on? I have lots of Squirmies that disintegrate at the tie-in point.
Yeah, that's why I'm kind of stressing not to put a lot of pressure on it. And they do disintegrate at the tie-in point after a while. But I can usually get a few months out of them before they fall apart. But yeah, you don't want to put you got to put enough pressure on it to attach it to the hook, but you don't want to put a ton of pressure on it because it does seem to break down at the tie-in points. Yep. The front of this fly, the bead covers it, so it may help. Now go ahead, Julia.
Veronica's asking, do you ever tie it with the worm material laying over top of the bead?
No, but you could. Yeah, you could. Yep. I don't know why. Oh, yeah, I see. Instead of tying it up front, just coming forward to the bead and letting it hang. Yeah, you could do that. Actually, you could make a three-legged worm by leaving the last piece. Oh, my battery is running low on my computer. It's supposed to be plugged in. Hang on, let me make sure that my computer is plugged in here. Oh, yeah. Okay. Back in business. Okay. Any more questions before we continue?
Nope. Good to go.
Nope. Okay. So now you just take that longer end. Oh, let me do something first. Bring the thread forward to right behind the bead, right up even with the bead. And then start winding this material and don't put any pressure on it at this point. Just make a couple very loose turns. So you can see I'm not stretching that. And you'll lose it. And start applying a little more pressure. And you notice that I have a gap there where I tied it in. And as you come up to the bead, just keep winding. And if you watch, you'll see that that stuff pushes back over that tie-in point. So you get a nice clean joint there. See how that covered it up now? And then, again, don't stretch this material, but just tie it off. So come over the top just with bobbin pressure. And I'm just, whoops, just going over the top. And then, again, I don't like to stretch it much when I tie it off. I pull it a little bit, and be careful you don't cut the body. You cut that off, and then I like to build this up here to stabilize that bead until the bead doesn't wiggle anymore, because I'm not going to put any cement or anything on here, so I'll make sure I fill that in. And then I just do a double whip finish here. So, and I don't put a lot of pressure on. Usually you want to tug on the whip finish pretty hard. I do a double whip finish. And I just tug on that a little bit to tighten it, not a lot. And then I do another whip finish on top. And that's your Squirmy. That's it. It's a killer fly. Wiggles in the water. Fish love them. Again, they eat a lot of worms, and we're matching the hatch there. So let's take a look at those legs or those squirmy things that I did earlier. So here are the various pieces, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to yank on these and just see if the head cement did anything to it. And that actually looks pretty good. I'm surprised. The head cement didn't seem to do. Oh yeah, it did. It kind of weakened it there, but it's not bad. But I can see that it's a little bit weakened there. Here's some water-based head cement, which shouldn't have hurt it. It kind of ran into the super glue. And that seems okay. Here's the super glue section. That stuck really well. That's super glue all over the place. As you know, I'm not the greatest super glue. And that seems like it didn't deteriorate that material. It really stuck to it, though. Better than the head cement, for sure. And then down here, we've got the UV cure. And I noticed that the UV resin, I don't know if you can see that, but it did take some of the coloring out of the squirmy material. And, you know, it doesn't really hold it very well. But you want to apply the cement to your thread wraps anyways, and not to the squirmy material. That didn't hold it very well, but it doesn't seem to have weakened it. And then here's liquid fusion, which again, so I don't know. It almost seems like there's a new formula of squirmies that are head cement resistant. I still wouldn't trust it, but it does look pretty solid. All those connections look pretty solid, and certainly the super glue really held onto there. So kind of an inconclusive study. I expected to see this stuff deteriorate from the cements, and I think I'm going to leave them. I'm going to do another one and leave it there for a couple of weeks and see what happens. Maybe we can figure it out, and if I find anything different, I'll report back in another tying session. But it was an interesting experiment, and I may look at those under a stereo microscope later on and see if there's any damage, but I don't think there is. All right, so that is the squirmy wormy. Not hard to tie, but there's just a few things to pay attention to when you tie them. Anybody else have any questions about this or suggestions? Why do people keep asking about stoneflies? We just tied a stonefly. How many stoneflies do you want? They're all about the same. Let's see.
We got a couple of questions about what kind of glue you're using, and then do you ever?
I'm not using any glue. I am not using any glue. That's why I put 2 whip finishes on. No glue. You can try glue.
They were wondering with your test or whatever.
What's that?
I think they meant when you were showing your test.
Oh, I used regular head cement, Orvis deep penetrating head cement. I used Orvis water-based head cement, which is the cement that comes with the basic kits. Neither of those held the material well, but they didn't seem to deteriorate it. I used super glue or Zap-A-Gap, which definitely sticks to the material and doesn't seem to deteriorate it. And then I used a UV cure resin, which doesn't stick to the material, but didn't seem to hurt it, and liquid fusion glue. So those are the glue. That's a little more of a flexible glue. Those are the glues that I use, and none of them seem to damage the material, which really surprised me because I know before I've had head cement eat right into this stuff. So I'm not quite sure if maybe the formula of the squirmy material that we're getting now has changed.
Mark's asking, do you ever trim the ends to a point?
No, I don't bother. You could. I don't bother.
And Bruce is asking if you could use gummy fish. I don't know if he means like the candy gummy.
Oh, gummy minnow. Gummy minnow.
Yeah.
And have the gummy worm tie as a dropper off the back to catch even more fish. Yeah, Bruce, that's a great idea. Great idea. Yeah, Joe, that was interesting, the adhesives, but I wouldn't trust them because I know that I've had adhesive eat through this stuff. So, yes, yeah, Keith, head cements are cellulose based, and it should have reacted with the worm, but it didn't. So I'm not quite sure what's going on here. Yeah, I'm going to place it in sunlight. Good idea, Roger. Good idea. I'm going to do that. I'm going to do another one, and I think I'll stretch it a little bit too. I think I'll stretch it and tape it in place, and then put the adhesives on there and leave it in the sunlight and see what happens. Great idea. I'm going to try that. But anyway, maybe we will be able to use head cement. David Roper Newman, you would not use one of these for salmon fishing, would you? For Atlantic salmon? I wouldn't stoop to that. I would not. What's the name of the Orvis squirmy material? The Orvis squirmy material is called silly worms, SILI worms. And it comes in various colors. I missed the tie. Can you show the fly again? Sure. Whoops, wrong one. There it is. Let me back it up maybe so you can see the whole fly. Almost the whole fly. Here, we'll give it a pan here. So there it is. And like I said, tie them long because you can always just cut them with your snips. Or you can bite them off if you want. They don't taste so good. But other questions? How long should the worms be? I don't know, Roger. I start with them long, and then if they don't, I start with them as long as I tie them. I don't know, a couple inches total length. And then sometimes I'll cut them back to see if a shorter one might work better. I don't think, a fish is going to eat a worm. I don't think they're very selective as to the size of the worm. If they eat a worm, they're going to eat there's a difference between a giant night crawler and a garden worm, but if a fish is going to eat a worm, I don't think they're going to be too picky about what size it is. So, Michael, I tried electrical shrink wrap over the Squirmy material, and it didn't work very well. And I also, the one thing I did use was a pink fabric paint over the thread wraps, and that didn't deteriorate the material. So you could use like a fabric paint, and that worked. And Rick, no, I don't use wire wraps on this. I think it would make it really difficult to wind that Squirmy material over the wire wraps. I suppose you could, but I just use a heavy enough tungsten bead that I can get it down. Pretty well. Is there a too long? I don't know, Stephen. there may not be. Of course, you got a hook in there, and you want to make sure. Usually, I find that fish just gobble these, and you don't usually get short strikes. But there could be too long. I guess I don't know. Tastes better than the live ones. Justin, are you saying that from experience, or are you just speculating? John says 1.5 to 2 inches works for me. Yeah. I'd rather see a Rosenbauer Flagler Squirmy Wormy tie-off. Yeah, that'd be fun. That'd be fun. I don't know what we do for the rest of the hour. Steven says, hi, Steven. You can fish any color you like as long as it's pink. Okay. Wrap in different color look like segments. Yeah, you could get fancy with that. Is it okay to crazy glue a live grasshopper on your fly hook? If you can, Bruce, if you can get a live hopper to sit still long enough to crazy glue it on the hook, then go ahead. But don't use it in places where natural bait is prohibited, because that would be considered a natural bait. Yes, Josie, I would fish this exactly the same as any other nymph. Any other nymph. It's just, it is a nymph, and it should be fished dead drift. They won't work. Well, they might work swung, but I wouldn't advise it. They spin in the water. When they hang downstream of you, they spin in the water and they twist your tippet. And I don't think it's a very good action on the swing. So fish might take it just at the beginning of the swing, but for the most part, you want to fish these dead drift. All right. Well, that was a short fly today, but it's a useful one. I fish the small creeks of the upper Delaware with the Squirmy, and it's absolutely killer right after some rain. Yeah, I also find that when the water goes up, these things really work. And then I try them in clear water when I think they might work, and they don't seem to work as well in clear water. And yes, they work on the Battenfield, Bruce, in high water. And you fish this with a triple dropper, with a mott fly and a pellet fly. Absolutely the height of dirtiness, Michael. The height of disgusting flies. Have you ever fished still? No, I never fished these in still water, Ed. It would probably work, but I haven't. I don't do an awful lot of still water fishing, but it might work. Any plans to have Deegan back? Well, not any firm plans, William, but she's certainly terrific, isn't she? And those of you who didn't see the tying session where Deegan Cherry showed me her crayfish pattern yesterday, it's in the archive and both in YouTube and in the Orvis Facebook page. Steven Zaker says it pairs well with that yellow stonefly nymph that you tied last week. Yeah, that'd be a good high water combo. Is a stonefly and a squirmy. That would be, first time I get out this spring in high water, which may be this week actually. That's what I would probably fish if I wasn't doing trout spay. I can't decide what I'm going to do yet. Good on the Housatonic, says Steven. Yeah, I'll bet it is. I'll bet it is. All right. Any other questions about the Squirmy or anything at all? Sent the whole trot line, says Bruce. Sounds like Bruce is not a worm fan. But any other questions? We had a fairly short tying session today, easy fly, but I don't like to do all difficult flies. Next week's going to be tougher. It's going to be a size 18 dry fly with a wing and with hackle, so it's going to be a tougher one. And then the come at me cray that we do is going to be a more complicated, more difficult one. Can you do a bass worm fly in the future, Ed? Like the gully worm, Ed? That's a great fly, and I'd have to go back and remember how to tie that one. But yeah, we should do some bass flies. Have you seen any of the flies tied by us on Instagram? I've seen some from the Fly Tying 101, Mark, but I don't think I've seen any by this group. If you guys do tie any of these flies that we do on these Monday sessions, please tag at Rosenbauer T. I don't look at Instagram every day. I try to stay off social media as much as I can, but I do look at Instagram. And if you're tying one of these flies, and you want to share it, I'd love to see your version. So yes, can you do a traditional Catskill fly? I did one, Bruce, last year. I did a classic Hendricks, either a Hendrickson or a red quill. I can't remember which. That's in the archives. But yeah, we could maybe we ought to do a Flagler tie off with a classic Catskill fly, like a light Cahill or something. That'd be a good one to do maybe later in the spring. All right, everyone. Well, if there are no questions. Oh, did somebody say, Roger Bird, did I see you say that squirmies are illegal in the San Juan? I thought I saw back a ways back. I thought I saw a post where Roger Bird said that squirmies are illegal on the San Juan. Roger, if you're still here, can you answer that question? I got a question for My turn for a question. Maybe Roger's gone. Yes, they are illegal. Okay, I wonder what other streams they are illegal. Do they what are they, Roger? Do they specifically say rubber worm flies are not legal, or Squirmy versus San Juan? Wow. Huh. I'll have to look that up. I didn't know that they were illegal. But that's very, very interesting. Because if I were going to go to the San Juan, the first thing I'd want to fish is a squirmy, and as opposed to a San Juan worm. All right, everybody. Well, I will see you. Actually, I will see you tomorrow. If you're interested in the pros and cons of a sling pack versus a vest, I get that question a lot. And I'm going to be here with my friend and coworker and fishing buddy, Jesse Haller, who develops he's the designer and developer of the Orvis sling bags and vests. And so we're going to talk about the pros and cons and try to help you choose between if you're looking for a new place to park your gear and to cart it around with you on the stream. We're going to go through the pros and cons and suggestions for whether you should use a sling pack or a vest. It's mainly a personal thing, but we're going to go through the pros and cons and try to help you make that decision. So it should be fun. Jesse is not exactly shy, and I'm sure he'll have lots of fun stuff to talk about. So anyway, thank you all, and really appreciate you coming in and tying with us today. Hope you tied along, because this wasn't a hard one. And we will see you. I'll see some of you tomorrow, and if not, see you next Monday when we'll tie. What are we tying? Oh, thorax blueing olive, which is probably in most places the first dry fly hatch of the season that you'll see. They can start hatching in March, or even earlier in some places. So it's the the first really good dry fly hatch in most streams. So it'll be a good dry fly to do. All right, everybody, stay healthy, stay well, get outside, get some exercise, and may see you tomorrow. Thanks.